What does your body feel like in zero gravity?
What inspires you to become an astronaut?
What exercise do you do, and do you sweat in space?
Would a yo-yo work in microgravity?
So it works.
All right, Vaughn, Next Century Learning Center. This is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Next Century.
Vaughn, Next Century Learning Center, welcome aboard the International Space Station. We hear you loud and clear.
All right. We've got some young, eager scientists ready to talk to you, so I'm going to turn you over to them.
Sounds great.
Hello. On Earth, we talk about seasonal affective disorder due to a lack of sunlight. Do astronauts experience these same symptoms?
It's funny you should ask that. Right now, our orbital pattern is such, and we're close to the solstice, that we almost have no nighttime if we look out the window. But we actually have lighting on the space station, which we can set for daytime and nighttime, and our sleeping quarters are all nice and dark at night. So we're able to avoid that. Every now and then on arrival, we end up with a little bit of jet lag because of the change in time zones. But other than that, we largely stay on one time zone and with consistent lighting. So we're able to avoid that disorder.
Miss Benya's kindergarten class would like to ask what happens if you spill water in the space station.
Thank you so much for such a great question. Well, spilling water on the space station can be a little bit crazy because it doesn't flow down like it does normally. And we'll try to show you a little bit of water here. It's got a little bit of a red color on it. And you can see that, oh, I spilled it. And it's just kind of floating away. So we got to go get it. We got to be careful. Oh, I can grab it with my finger and then drink it. But we have to make sure we clean up too.
What is gravity? What is gravity?
That's a big one. That's a big one. Gravity is a property. Anything that has mass has gravity, and gravity is an attractive force. And gravity is determined by two things: how much mass an object has, how big it is, and how close you are to it. And we're still very, very close. We're only 250 miles away from Earth, so we're still largely under the influence of Earth's gravity. But it appears we are not, because we are in free fall around the Earth. And the way we get there, you can think about throwing a ball. You give a ball a toss, and it's going to eventually be pulled to the ground like a parabola. And if you can throw the ball harder and harder, that curve to the ground will get further and further away. And if you can throw a ball hard enough, it will eventually be curving and just falling all the way around the Earth. And so when we launch on a rocket, it's just like trying to throw a baseball really hard to get that parabola or that curve. So we're just in constant free fall around the Earth, which simulates not having gravity.
Have you seen a Have you seen a difference in the plants you have been growing, and if so, what type of things have changed in the growing process?
Yes, there are some differences. On Earth, you have normal light. You have rain that falls onto the soil and gravity pulls it down. Up here, we don't have gravity and we don't have direct sunlight, so we use light bulbs at different frequencies to simulate the energy, to provide the energy needed for the plants to grow. We also sometimes see that instead of the roots growing down like they would on Earth because they can sense gravity, they kind of sometimes they get a little lost and they roll around in circles and then until they can find the water. But the stronger plants always go right to water. So a few differences there.
What is the hardest thing for you to do in space that we do on Earth?
Just about everything, I think, is more difficult in space, except for floating and doing flips and maybe moving really heavy objects. The day-to-day stuff that we take for granted on Earth, we've evolved on planet Earth, and we have thousands of years of history of dealing with gravity. So a simple thing like sitting your pen down here, you set a pen down on your table at home, it's going to be there when you get back. You sit it down anywhere here, you don't know where you're going to find it.
Has there been any emergencies while you were on the ISS?
No actual emergencies. We have had a couple of false alarms, smoke alarms, that happens from time to time when things get a little bit dusty when we're doing a lot of work and the detectors kick off. But we are well trained and we are ready to go just in case.
How is the experience of microgravity different than the practice done underwater in the neutral buoyancy lab here on Earth?
Yeah, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab back in Houston, Texas is a gigantic pool where we practice spacewalking, and we actually suit up in our spacewalking suits and go practice doing all our tasks out on the International Space Station. And it's very similar to what we do when we go outside here for a spacewalk. The one difference is that I can think of is when you start moving in your spacesuit, you're really heavy, you probably weigh over 500 pounds. And in the water, in the pool, if you start moving, the water will eventually slow you down and kind of hold you stable. Here on the space station, once you start moving, you're just like Isaac Newton tells us, you're going to continue moving until you stop yourself. So maintaining your stability and not moving around and then just slowing yourself down is a lot more work on the space station than in the pool.
Does your digestion change due to being in microgravity?
Well, that's an interesting question. We don't have any research that suggests that it does, but everybody experiences slightly different things. For instance, sometimes the food sits in the middle of your belly. It makes some people feel hungry all the time, and it makes some people feel like, well, I'm full and I don't really need to eat. So pretty much it's a kind of a case-by-case basis, but in my case, everything seems very normal.
With all the problems and priorities in the world, why do you feel we should spend money on space traveling?
It's a fair question, and I like to think of the spending on space travel as an investment in our life back on Earth, advances in medicine and in science. But a real tangible one for me, earlier today we flew right over the tip of South Africa, and there's a major city there called Cape Town, and with millions of people living there. And Cape Town is just about out of drinking water. Here on the space station, we've developed and are continuing to refine technology where we reutilize or reuse almost 90% of the water that we generate here on the space station. So we're able to take humidity from the atmosphere, liquid waste from people not only exhaling but also from urine, and turn it into very, very pure drinking water. And that's a major challenge around the world with drought occurring on a more regular and more frequent basis, where cities will not have access to something as simple as pure drinking water. And we are working very hard on that technology here to help us here and also help us as we explore space.
Hi. Our Women's History projects helped us notice that there were not many women in the field of science. How does the ISS help encourage women to go into space?
Well, we are doing a lot of neat things. We're doing a lot of neat research. We're operating a lot of cool vehicles. We're developing new vehicles, and we have some great new missions coming up to explore space and distant space locations. So we hope that girls and women find this science and these operations interesting, and they come to it like a magnet. And in the class of 2013, The astronauts that were selected included 8 people, 4 men and 4 women. So there's a lot of great opportunities here.
When on the ISS with people from many different nations, are there ever cultural conflicts? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, right now we have 3 people from the United States. We have a Japanese doctor and 2 Russian cosmonauts. We have a German astronaut getting ready to join us here in a few weeks. It's a very multinational, multicultural community we have here on the space station. But it doesn't start here. When we arrive at the space station, we actually live and work and train together for years before we arrive here. So we spend a lot of time listening, a lot of time learning about each other's countries. We have the benefit of sometimes being able to travel and visit and learn more about where our colleagues come from and how they were raised and the languages they speak. So it's just like on Earth. I think it's just an exercise in taking an interest in other people, other cultures, and other things, and being accepting and willing to learn from them.
How does your new experience of visiting and working in space affect your perspective of life on Earth?
Well, I think it's done a lot to reinforce what I already thought about our lovely Earth. When I was on Earth, I like to go camping. I like to watch the sun come up. I like to see the open country. I like to see the people and participate in lots of events down there. Seeing it from the big picture and seeing the different climate patterns, seeing the sun come up and go down, 15 or 16 times a day, has just very much reinforced my feelings for Earth and how beautiful it is. And when I get back home and go camping again, I will remember what I saw up here and relate it to what I'm seeing real time.
Does radiation affect food and supplies we bring into Earth?
Our food, that's an interesting question. Radiation affects a lot of things up here. That's one of the studies we are doing. In fact, when we were doing a spacewalk last week, and a part of the space station I was actually working on had an experiment called the MISSY. And we put all kinds of materials out in the vacuum of space to see what the effect is on those materials. Because we need that information to help us build better spaceships and vehicles and other things that we use in space as we move out into the solar system. But our food, it affects the nutritional value. Over time, the nutritional value of our food continues to decline due to exposure to radiation. And obviously that's a concern for us as we spend longer and longer periods of time out in space.
Good morning, astronaut. My name is Melanie Andrade, and I am in the 3rd grade. I was curious to ask, what are some of the current daily routines in space?
Well, we wake up at 6, we get ready, we get dressed, we have breakfast, and then we have our morning meeting somewhere between 7 and 7:30, and then we work until lunch, and then we have lunch, and then we work again until dinner. First we have a meeting, and then we have dinner, and then we have a couple hours to just take care of email and talk to each other and get our plan together for the following day, and then we sleep for about 8 hours or so. We try to do the same thing as often as we can, but every once in a while it gets disrupted when we have a new vehicle coming, like we do this Thursday when Cygnus arrives, or when we do a spacewalk. The schedule gets a little bit longer and a little bit harder.
Did you have to give up anything in your personal or professional life to become an astronaut?
From my personal life, I think everyone up here would give you the same answer. I left home on the 2nd of February and will not arrive back home until sometime in October. So that's a significant amount of time away from my family and my friends. So that is definitely one of the sacrifices of being able to do this job. Prior to becoming an astronaut, I used to be a teacher, and I really enjoyed interaction with young people like yourself, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of that. And I get to do it a little bit in this job, but largely I'm up here with people who used to be young, and and I do miss that part of my life. But this is a pretty good one up here too.
Hello, my name is Jacob Solis. The question I prevail amongst you is, after spending a prolonged time in space, what do you have to do to help recover your muscles once back on Earth?
Well, the key to having good muscles when we get back to Earth is maintaining them while we're up here. When we get back to Earth, it's more of a balance thing, and our muscles are in good shape. And we keep them in good shape by working out. We're about 2 to 2.5 hours a day, every day while we're up here. We have resistive exercise. It's like lifting weights. And we also have treadmill and a bicycle, a stationary bicycle, which is right here to my left, that we use for cardio. And lots of exercise. It just keeps us in shape. So when we get home, we're ready to go.
What was the most exciting thing that has happened in space that you've seen?
There's a lot of exciting things that happen in a job that starts off with a rocket launch. I can tell you Scott's getting ready to head home in a couple of weeks, and he's going to end up with probably one of the most exciting rides of his life heading back to Earth. But so far, apart from the rocket launch, had to be my first and then second spacewalk since I've arrived. I've been able to ride on the robotic arm with Scott and Nemo flying, and to kind of just have your feet in a footrest and to back away from the space station, and you look at your feet and all you can see is the black of space, and you kind of look up a little bit and you see the Earth over your head and nothing else around you. It's kind of like free flying in space, and it was a pretty wild ride. A very smooth ride, but it was a pretty wild ride.
How do you keep the space station clean?
Well, it takes a lot of work, I'll tell you that. On a daily basis, we try to just we tidy up, we clean up after ourselves. If we see somebody else make a mess, we help them clean it up, and we try to keep up with it as best we can. But once a week, on Saturday mornings, we all take 2 or 3 hours, and we all have a certain area that we're going to be responsible for, and we clean it. We vacuum, we wipe down, and we make sure everything is put away and the trash is empty and taken care of properly. We've got to keep the space station clean. We've got to take care of the space station so that we can continue doing great science.
Has anything ever crashed into your solar panels?
Well, fortunately, nothing large yet. We're able to track a lot of larger objects, and we can actually move the space station to get out of the way. But I helped install the last set of solar panels on the space station back in 2009. So it's been 9 years ago since those solar panels have been out in space. And if you take a good look at them, they get hit by a fair bit of smaller debris. But the panels were designed, they're very robust. They were designed to sustain impacts and still provide the electricity that we need to keep the space station going. So far, so good. They're operating almost like they did the day we installed them.
Is there any ongoing research for future station, potentially artificial gravity?
Well, we have a lot of experiments going on here at any given time, 200 to 250. And one of the experiments we're doing is called AMS. It's a spectrometer that looks at radiation and antimatter in space. And for us to be building our future space stations, we need to understand the environment. So we're spending a lot of time trying to understand the radiation environment so that we can learn how to protect our systems and protect ourselves during long-duration flight into deep space. We are developing the Gateway, which is our new station. It's on the drawing board right now, and all of the lessons learned that we have here, all of the science that we do here all that technology is rolling into that design, and so that hopefully we can have a space station that is cutting edge and able to do things that no other space station has ever done before.
All right, thank you guys so much for your time. That's all of our questions. We really appreciate you taking your time from your very busy schedule to speak to our students.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on board, and thank you for the outstanding questions. And we look forward to following all the careers of all these young folks in the audience that were spending part of their day with us. So wish you all the best, and have a wonderful summer.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
From Vaughn Next Century Learning Centers. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communication.